Hey everyone, Shade Raven here with the first in a series I am calling Pathfinder 2 Made Easy on Fantasy Grounds. If you're not familiar with Fantasy Grounds, it is a virtual tabletop available at fantasygrounds.com. You can find the software under the download section. It is free to load. There are plenty of RPGs out there that are supported as well that you can uh, you know, pick up the rule sets for and play for free. Pathfinder 2 is definitely one of them. Um, and I have played quite a few of them, but Pathfinder 2 is the one I spend the most time in and I'm most active with in the community. If you are curious about, I should say, the uh, Fantasy Grounds Virtual Tabletop and how Pathfinder 2 is played on it, this is this should serve you very well in learning what you might want to know about it. If you are someone who is already familiar with it and just looking to learn tips and tactics, maybe these first couple of videos won't be as important to you. There will be more advanced uh, videos about some of the deeper integration, automation, and other uses that you can get out of the Fantasy Grounds rule set for Pathfinder 2's Fantasy Grounds rule set for Fantasy Grounds. But this one will just begin with the basics. So as you can see up here, I already have the Fantasy Grounds screen up. If you'd gone through the download, this will be essentially what you see as you come into it. You will see a kind of, I don't know if my mouse is showing up that easy, but you'll see a little box in the lower left hand of the starting menu that says check for updates. That will have a red little highlight around it when it is there is an update for it. Pretty easy to click. It'll go through and give you the latest versions of any of the books, rule sets, even third-party materials might get off the forge. Will all come up in that when you give an update. But for now, let's talk about being a GM or DM, as has been called by some companies. Uh, when you come in here for the first time or you're wanting to start that new campaign, you will see some options here, and the one that obviously is appropriate for GMs will be the create a campaign one. You will click that, and it'll give you a quick little box showing what your options are here. For this one, I'm going to start by giving it a name. We'll just call it PF2 First Run. And then you will see a list of a lot of the game systems I have given and played. There are other ones that can be picked up and added to this list, but in this rather lengthy list of it, you will find the Pathfinder 2E. The legacy version of the stuff before the remastered series came out can also be played out here. I'm going to be focusing on the remastered stuff as it's the latest, greatest, and currently getting most of the attention as it's obviously the one that's getting all the new material. So I will click on that, saying that I want to play in that. There are some extensions here we could use. That'll be in a later video, or explain some of the better ones out there, or even how to use them. Some of the basic stuff you'll see in here though are like themes. If you want to look at some of the different kind of screen themes, the generalization of how your virtual tabletop will look. The legacy ones, I think there is some caution there, because if you run some of the legacy ones, you might be using some different fonts that aren't necessarily uh, adapted to the newest material. So for the most part, stick it to the core, normal or dark. If you like, a little darker look to your things is the way to go. But we're not going to worry about that this time. We'll just use the standard stuff. You will see server type, which is cloud and LAN. I've actually never played on the LAN because the cloud is a tremendous service. Never really had any problem with people connecting to it. There's always the learning process of showing how players do that. Now in the next video, I will look at it on the player side of things and how they connect to what the GM is setting up as a campaign. But for the GM side of things, you just probably want to use cloud. Again, if you're a LAN player, I'm sure you can figure out how you can get everybody connect to that. The server list can either be public or private. Because we can set a password, which we will do in this case, the being public is, there's nothing wrong with that. People won't be able to get in and harass you unless you use like 12345 as your password. Hope I didn't give away anybody's right there. Uh, but otherwise, it does make it a little bit easier because you'll be able to see the list. People will be able to search for you a little easier. Although even private ones, I believe, come up in a search list if you know the name of the GM. But for now, we're just going to call this password PF2 easy as our password. We'll make it a public one. We have our campaign name and we have our campaign settings, and that's all it takes to get started at first. There are cases where maybe knowing the IP and stuff is important, but I have not really had any need for those for quite a few years. Everybody should be able to find it pretty easy to connect to the cloud servers and just join in on the games. There is plenty of ability to find support out on the forums, which there on that initial screen there was a button for getting to the forums and getting support and stuff too. But for now, we're just going to start, and we'll get this new campaign kicked off for Fantasy Grounds version of Pathfinder 2E. You can see, quickly grab like a cloud server, and it's going to be loading it. There'll be your first time through, especially, but essentially almost every time. There'll be a little bit of a delay because I have a lot of the books for Pathfinder 2E. All the core ones load, which will include, all the core remastered ones, because that's what we're playing, the remastered series. So it'll be Player Core 1, Player Core 2, GM Core, the monster books, all of that stuff. Pops in. You can see, it didn't take too long. We can see the little thing let me know that I am playing the remastered series. And click that really quick. A little bit of fade out. And now we got to here. This is the initial, kind of the basic look you'll have on your entry into here. Chat box to the left where a lot of information will be displayed. There's a neat little DC challenge rating computer for you that helps with running things as a GM. And like your drop down menus and stuff there on the right hand side. We'll look quickly at the campaign setup stuff. Again, another button for forums. Easy to get out there. Start to look for help or just see what people are discussing. Add your own comments. Maybe even show things that have worked well for you. But it's also a good place to ask questions and get help if you run into something that you'd like to be a little better at or a little confused about, as well as some user guides and stuff. I'm not going to worry about that too much. I want to talk about some of the main things as a GM you'll want to tackle at first. So we'll go right to the options menu first, and then we'll deal with the modules menu next. Options have a bunch of different things in here. I know I have a pretty wide screen. Hopefully this print isn't too small for you. I'm going to be honest, most of this stuff is not going to be things you have to mess with too much, especially as a first-time GM. There'll be kind of the baseline of everything that'll make things run pretty handily, but there are some variant rules and functionality stuff in here. When you start getting into more automation, want to see what it's about more, maybe understand what it does and be able to affect it yourself or add your own. Turning the automation field visibility on down towards the bottom will be pretty helpful on that. There's a couple of things I like to do on mine, but we'll worry about that when we get a little deeper into running the game. But yes, when you initially come in here, you'll have those. Easy enough to just breeze through them and look it over. Most of them are self-explanatory. And, toying with them, there's nothing wrong with it. You checking out what each one does and getting to know the options menu. But if you just played with the base options, you'll get everything you need out of the game. Except for, like I said, if you start digging a little deeper on things like the automation or you want to use some of the variant rules. So we'll close that for now. The one thing that you should always get familiar with, though, right from the start, even if you're a new GM, is understanding the modules window. This will show you all the books that you have currently open and available to look through, read, share with players, etc. And complementing that or in association with that is a very important button down here called activation. That shows where you can get to the material, figure out which ones you do and don't want to have loaded as you come in, and which ones you do and don't want to have the players have access to and share and all that. We'll get that in a second. There's also a store button. So if you're like, hey, really enjoying this out here, I don't have War of Immortals yet. I'd like to pick up that material because it's got a couple of really cool classes in it. Some other material I'd like to be able to use in my campaigns. You can go to the store for that. Uh, but we'll get in some of the purchasing options here in a second compared to the stuff that comes with the base game. So we'll look at that base game first. The first thing is when you come to model activation, you'll see a bunch of things, including a lot of my own projects and stuff out here. But for now, I'm going to go by author Paizo. Not sure how they say it. It'll start bringing up ones that are specifically from that company. So these are official products that come from them that have been converted for Fantasy Grounds. There's a bunch of adventure paths and whatnot for that. But I want to focus in more on some of the core stuff. So on the list by names, I'm also going to put in core, and we could see the base core rules that are available in this game, including some of the legacy stuff. You might say, well, why would you want to have the legacy stuff here when I'm using remastered stuff? Well, sometimes there's just stuff out there that you want to borrow from. Maybe some feats that didn't come over, items that haven't been converted that you still want to use. And certainly, there's just some good reading in some of those original source books. But I want to focus this time on the orc stuff, which is their kind of the Paizo's version of the open gaming license, so that there's access for all the people that want to be able to play the game without having to purchase the books. Well, that stuff is here. I obviously have the full, the full hardback, sort of virtual hardback versions of these out here, and I use them myself. But if you're wanting to play Pathfinder 2 for free on Fantasy Grounds, which is also for free, you could do so just using the orc stuff. You can get all the core books. You can see, like I said, you can see the GM core, monster core. There will be an orc version, if I go to the next page, of the player's core. You can actually see Starfinder out there because they now those two are more easily integrated into each other. If I wanted to look at some other things, like Lost Omens stuff, because Lost Omens is part of their intellectual properties, that is not as shared as much. Those you would have to kind of come out and think about whether or not they're worth purchasing. That said, any of the information you find out here, you can put in on your own if you're willing to take the time to add it. If it's just a single feat, easy enough to go out to a place like Archives of Nethys and find that feat, create a new feat, put the information in, add it to a character that wants it. Or you could spend the time to add all the classes and everything else you want. It just takes a little investment of your time in it. But it's all there and can be done. But we'll leave the side alone for now. I kind of want to explain when I talked about what you want to share with players. Like, you could see the list of things over here that I have available. The one I like to look at initially is the guns and gears stuff. So I'm going to pull up here on the activation stuff as a GM. It would help if I put in guns, not gun. There is more than one in Guns and Gears. And we could see that there is the remastered version of Guns and Gears, which I've loaded into here. I have it set in this campaign initially to automatic. Players will get that information. It's part of the core rules, and they'll have it ready to play. It is maybe not appropriate, as people might think, for every campaign. So if you were a GM who's like, I don't really want that kind of options for players out there. I don't want gunslingers and things like that. You can block this information down here at the bottom of this module activation. There are 3 options. You can see where I have it automatically set. I could have had a check mark there, which means, hey, players, you're available. I'm not going to make you load the books. You could just decide if you want to open yourself. When I do the player side of things, we'll go over that real quick. And then there's a red X, which says, no, I don't want players to have access to this, which means even if a player themselves had owned the book, it wouldn't be available for them to open up in the campaign because it's, like I said, you're setting, some restrictions on what you want available here. Now, inside of each, if you were like, hey, I'm going to use stuff from Dark Archives, but I don't want to use all of it. You're just going to have some agreements with players. You can play this out of Dark Archives, but I don't want these. But that's true whether at the you know at the table with other people in person, or whether you're playing on the virtual tabletop. You know, having players talk to you as a GM and deciding what you are willing to allow and what you'd like to restrict in the game is just part of the role playing experience. So, anyways, that is how you set that up. You can also come in here and set, like with how, if I didn't want that to automatically load when I started, or I want to unload it just to make it a little bit, quicker getting in and out, I could close that. You'll see it disappear off over here. I could change it from auto load to just a check mark saying it'll be allowed for players. As the GM, you always got the option to get it, whether or not you put a check mark or an X there or whatever. But that will, change how it's pulled in automatically when you first get to it. Learning that side of things, pretty easy, but pretty important as you, explore what you want to have available to players and what you want to have ready for use yourself. I will even, in some of my campaigns, because the Bestiaries 1, 2, and 3 had some creatures that didn't converted, some of it for obvious reasons for people familiar with everything that's happened in the last few years with the OGL. Sometimes it's just maybe they haven't gotten to it, or they just found some other new creatures that they wanted to add and put in these rule books and leave those old ones behind. But I could pull those in, and for some of the campaigns I run, which I'll show examples of at some point, I like to pull in some of those old creatures. Throwback stuff. So there's your initial starting. You can get in, you can set your rule books, you can look at your options, make sure you got everything there set, and just that alone gets you ready to have players come into your game. Once you got that set up, you're off and rolling. You could even just use this if you didn't want any of the books. You didn't want to worry about the orc stuff. You just wanted players to come in and have a virtual place to chat and roll some dice. This is the place. You could do it too. And we're going to talk about that keyword and all that. That was dice, because they have some extraordinarily fun dice in the Fantasy Grounds Virtual Tabletop. And I'm going to show you some right now. In the upper right hand under Tool, along with some of the other things we'll discuss real briefly, are the dice set. This is some fun stuff. They have some basic dice that you can come in here by default and have, as you can see down at the bottom, like I have a black with white numbering on it. And I could even, I could change that if I was like, what, I've always like this kind of darkish blue. That's the way I want to go. You could change the size of the dice if you want them a little bigger or smaller as they're out there. You can do that, and just like that, you've changed the color of your dice. I rolled a 4. Clearly, my blue is a cursed color. I need something else. I'm going to try a more golden yellow now because that's so bright. I want to be able to see the text a little more. Oops, I changed the body. I want the text to be black. How do I do that? Come down here, change that to dark text. Hit OK, go back to the body, change it back to the yellow, and quickly enough I have sort of a golden, well, that's got a little green tint to it, yellow, and thinking that will be my lucky dice, and look at that, it's 19, must be. But besides that, there are a lot of other cool dice sets out there to get. A bunch of them for purchase, but there are some base ones that come in that have some pretty cool effects. And to kind of show off some of them, I'm just going to hit a randomizing up here of the dice that I do have. First one you can see is kind of they call a metal stained one. It certainly has a different look to it. It's darker. It's got, that kind of what coppery, greenish kind of coloration from that. But you'll see here's one with some of the effects. Magically charged lightning dice. And when I throw those down, they'll come around with a bunch of different effects. And there are lists of them here. You can see main, and I'm scrolling down. You can see just tons and tons of different ones. This one I don't have. If I, without it, I could go out to the store, find where these are. Clicking on one even gives me a URL that says, do you want to go to the store to look at your type of dice? And I'd be like, you know what, those are pretty cool. I can go see examples of them and decide whether or not they're for me. I'm not going to bother with that for now. I think you guys get the gist of it. I want to keep experimenting. Here's one that's got like little hearts and stuff that pop up. We've missed Valentine's Day, but maybe you're still feeling a very romantically inclined, and you want to use those, or maybe you have a campaign that's centered around that theme that might be appropriate for. And again, you could see just a bunch of different ones that I could scroll through and look over and decide. There's even kind of some fun stuff associated with it. I could set that for how I want my NPC dice to look. I can set how I want my dice to look for different elements. I can see there's an acid one. If I wanted to change that and use a different look from the current dice set I want, because I like, let's say, the acid out of the magic aura ones, I could drag that over here and add that to it if I wanted to make a new custom one. So there are a lot of dice options, and let's face it, those role-playing and dice, they kind of go together, and it's just fun to have different ones and different options as you explore the possibilities. So did spend a little bit of time on that. As you might be able to tell, I love dice. Always toying around with them myself. Beyond the dice, module permissions and all that, you're in pretty good shape. We'll talk a little bit about some of the options that drop down here. The library is just where you could find the modules box that I had up here. There's also an assets here, which let you add and find new images, tokens, and things like that. We could see that if I have a bunch of things that I've played, but as you could, there's even a way to go to your folder for this particular campaign, and when I click that, it'll take me to the Fantasy Grounds folders, which I'm not going to show here, where you can find a place to put images in that you find out on Google, copy them in there, and pull them into your campaign. I'll go over stuff like that as we get a little deeper into the GMing side of things. I don't this one's already kind of going on a little bit long. I don't want it to be too long. I want everybody to get comfortable with what they're going to see when they first come in here. But yes, that's where you can find some of that. Getting no assets as you get going along does help. The books just show me the basic kind of reference manuals that come with all these. Sometimes it's a good place to look up rules. It'll pull up a nice little reference manual box so you can kind of get your full manual in. As you can see, I'm looking at War of Immortals here. I can go page or section by section and look at everything's available in here. I can also jump ahead if I want to go look at the Animus real quick. I could jump to the Animus, start reading through the information about that, and see all the details on the Animus itself. There is obviously individual entries under character classes, where I can also find the Animus and its individuals in its own box by itself, where you can have all this information when you add it to a character sheet, or if you want to pin it someplace, you could do that as well. But the full reference manuals here with all the pictures and links to various features within it, you'll find there. You can see here's the Spirit House from that. I can pull that in. I can even right-click here and do some sharing, so I can show it to players, and then players can see it as well. There'll be a little destination up here saying it's now public if I want to show a picture that I find particularly interesting or appropriate. But that's all here. You can find your books over here on the right under library. Sound sets, that's something I personally have gotten used to yet. By the time I'm ready for that, hopefully I'll be able to do a video and show you guys what I'm learning there. Um, there's a player section. That's where players will have their characters. We'll see more on that when we do the player side of things. Here's the campaign section on the right-hand side. Includes your bestiary. That'll have 26 pages right now of different creatures that you can comb through when you're looking for it. You can pull it up by level if you're looking for creatures by a certain level. You have search boxes here. You have filter things where if I'm like, no, I just really want to see second level characters, then I can pull them up there and pull up an individual one like the Bugbear Prowler. Again, as we get into more advanced stuff, we'll go over some of the features and different details involved there. But again, items, parcels, tables, traits, some of that stuff will be, individual campaign or adventure path specific. But you can find all that information there. There's some interesting world things here. Locations are kind of things you can create yourself as a GM to, add depth to the campaign, kind of a focal point for where, the players and the campaign is running at this point. Again, more of an advanced thing. Story will be these individual kind of pull-up boxes where you can read some of the information that is inside here for easy, like kind of links when you were like, I just want to be able to look at the rules on wand use. I'm going to add that to a character sheet. A character wants to always be able to understand how they can make use of the wand stuff. So that's where you can find that. But you can also pull that directly from a reference manual. And then the character stuff here, which has, activities, ancestries, backgrounds, and all of that. Much more stuff on the player side of things, but of course, as the GM, you're going to want to have access and knowledge of all that information. But that's where you find it all. We'll talk about things like the combat tracker, how creatures get added to it, including, all the cool animation and stuff that is done in great detail in a future video in this series. For now, we will go look at that bestiary again, look at our second levels, and I'll just show a quick example of putting a boggart warrior up there. A lot of times you'll be doing it through the encounters thing, where it'll, you have a chance to set your experience and all that. But adding that to there, you'll see that there is a boggart warrior up here, and the information of that, the basic stuff, like attacks and stuff will be right here. Simple clicks when I want to attack with a club. It'll pull up a result showing what the bonus and the totals are. There are buttons down here in the lower left for cover, for off guard, for full crit, half damage. A lot of that stuff, as you have targets, will be automated. So if you hit with a crit, it'll automatically do the crit information for you. There is so much automation in here. Try to touch on it very lightly right now. That makes it so easy to play this game here. We'll look at the boggart warrior real quick. We can see it's got a terrifying croak here, which has a will save of a DC 18. Just for fun, I will have it target itself, which can be also done on a map with a control click, and have it do a saving throw against itself. It would then show, hey, look, boggart warrior tried to, terrifyingly croak itself and managed to save against itself. There's a quick little like automation button here where it'll apply the effects on it. Clicking that, you'll notice nothing happened because if you look up here, you see it only has, a couple of things that have effect. If it fails, it would have been frightened. In this case, I saved. There would have been a chance to have been immune to it on a critical success. Let's say it subjected itself somehow for it for a second time, and you can see there's a crit failure. And sure enough, I can go up here, hit the automation thing, and it'll apply a terrifying croaked frightened one, which will put frightened one down on this creature, which we can look at the C rule, the quick double click of it, what that does. Reduces all your checks, DCs, so your defenses, your attacks, all of that will be changed. We saw before it was a +8 when it attacked with its, or up here, that was a save. Way up here, +10 on its club attack. What would happen when it was frightened? Well, the automation and all that will handle that. You'll see now it's only +9. We'll show it rolled a 13 on it against itself. even with the frightened condition, it would have had despite the defensive effects of -1, it would have still hit itself. Again, with all this, it's simple click up here, double click on the damage, and it would apply the 11 points of damage to the boggart. Wounding the creature. For the GM, you will see it has 11 wounds, it's still 27 hit points left. That is just a small taste of the automations out here. There is a ton of it. It will handle a lot of the condition stuff. There will be obviously second and the whole slew and list of different conditions. You will get so much of that automated. It'll handle things like basic saving throws where you take double, half, normal, or no damage. So when the dragon breathes on somebody and you take one character takes half damage and another character takes double damage, you just roll the damage and it automatically adjusts based on those characters' individual saving throws for whether or not they took half damage or full damage or double damage from those attacks. So those are just some of the quick highlights on some of the things you can do in Fantasy Grounds as a GM. It's handled for you. Don't have to worry about it. That croak, terrifying croak, has a frightened condition. Is if you're familiar with how that works, frightened reduces at the end of your turn each time. If we were to advance a turn, if there was more actors in there, more characters, it would jump to the next one. This time it's going to jump to the next round for this character. But you will see the frightened condition's gone as it's had its turn and it's shaken off that frightened condition. Again, one of the many things that are handled out here in Fantasy Grounds to make your life as a GM easier. Gosh, I did mention I wanted to go over the simple basics of the DC box. That'll be really useful, especially on the player side of things. If you have an effect that say it's a level 2, you'll be able to put level 2 in here, and it'll show it's got a roll DC of 16. If you decide there is something that makes it more difficult to accomplish that or easier, you could alter that quickly by adding, let's say, +2 for hard. Suddenly this level 2 challenge is got a little bit harder than normal. It's now got a DC of 18. I think the Boggart Warrior here might have some skills. Let's look. Yeah, he's got athletics of 8. If he were to try to roll his athletics check, he rolls a 20, and you can see it's going to compare that against what the GM has set for the current challenge. A 28. Obviously, a 20 makes for a critical success. Obviously, whatever it was trying to do with its athletics, let's say it was trying to escape, it did it quite easily. And that'll work for a bunch of different things. You also have some rarities, or if you're someone who just prefers to use like the simple rules, this is just a simple trained thing, you could set that stuff quickly in here. If you want to clear because you don't want to have some of the old settings, you can come back here and say, well, I just want to have a kind of a simple trained challenge for this Boggart Warrior's attempt at, we'll say, intimidation this time. It rolled a 4. You can see it was a failure. Checked its 4 against its 15, or just total of a 9 against a 15. That would be a failure, and whatever I was trying to attempt as a Boggart Warrior would have not reached the threshold it needed for success. So, yeah, the combat stuff's up here. There's a button here for characters. Most of the powers, especially on your turn, you'll see those. Off turn, if this creature had some reaction skills, they would be seen. If I add a second Boggart to the thing, you'll see there's one there. It doesn't have reactions. I could probably find one creature that does have them, so you could see that you'll be reminded what's available to creatures even off their turns. That's probably pertinent when it's not their turn that you might need. You might want to have quick access to, and you can expand and contract these using some of these buttons, offense, defense, and stuff. If I wanted to look and see what its fortified save was, for example, I could hit the little defense button and see, oh, it's +10, or maybe somebody does something to it, and I decide it needs to make a fortitude save. Come here, do a quick double click on there. It rolls a fortitude save with a +10 bonus of a 21. And it can adjust accordingly. Again, most of the time, if it's a power that does something, it will have automation to it that'll let us apply the effects of that saving throw automatically based on the results. I think, without uh, going too heavily in this first video, which is probably for some people already over half an hour and too long. Hopefully not. Hopefully most of the stuff has, real value, especially to the newer GM looking to understand how to use fantasy grounds. I will definitely go into some deeper details on, how the automation is used, how to pull some of these effects together in a grand campaign or even in a single one-shot night where you want to, pull off something, how you can make those nights go off spectacularly just using all the tools, automation, and features available in Fantasy Grounds for the Pathfinder 2 RPG. I think that covers it for now. Again, I'm going to be doing another one right away after this to talk about the player side of things, how they can connect, making sure they can get in, where they can find their materials, creating a first character, all of that. But for the GM side of things, I hope this was useful for you, and I will catch you on the next video.